All right, hi. I just got back from a 4 mile bike ride. Not much of a bike ride, I mean, but hey, I'm happy I did it anyway. That said, a few changes going on in the room. This is not a room tour video, but I did want to go ahead and show you the absolute disaster that is this room right now. But there's two of them. Two of the drawer things. What are those called anyway? They're like a stack of three drawers. Anyway, I like them because I tend to be a pretty disorganized builder. Disorganized in the sense that I know where things are, but if someone else was coming in here and was tasked with building something, they'd probably have no idea what my system is, because that's what works for me. I have ADHD, and I guess that's just the type of ADHD I have. I heard that that's a thing, by the way. People just having like a cluttered organization. There's got to be a name for that. Like, anyway, though. Yeah, so just got back home, poured a cup of like mocha and then set it down, and it fell over onto my power supply. Thankfully I'd finished drinking it by that point, but it's been a morning. Also, I've been up since 4. So I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so what's the point of this video? That's a good question. I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I actually came in here because I wanted to go ahead and do some more cleanup, do some more organization, but I wanted to try and get something out today. And I was thinking about making a video talking about like biking and stuff like that, which is weird because it's not something I do a whole lot of, but at the same time, I feel good when I do it. And I'm not the type of person to like exercise for the sake of exercise, you know, like I feel fine in my body, which is good. Took me a long time to get here for sure. So it's not like I'm doing it to better myself, I guess, but in a way it still does. It's kind of like an added benefit. And so yeah, it's a nice feeling either way. I got in here. I wanted to do a couple of different types of videos, and I know like what my audience wants for the most part in terms of what videos I decide to make, but I don't try to make all of my videos cater to the algorithm or to sort of what my audience necessarily wants to watch, which I know sounds really weird and counterintuitive, but because again, I don't consider myself a biotuber, so to speak. I am tangentially. It is my niche, but as a person, that's not how I identify myself, because I have more passions in life than just the things that I build, right? I have the stories that got me here and everything else as well. And so sometimes I feel like it's just fun to share those, and when I can tie them into Bionicle, to do so, because a lot of my life has revolved around Bionicle as a theme. It's been a defining factor of my life for sure. But at the same time, I enjoy so much in life, you know, and there's a lot to sort of draw inspiration from. I've mentioned in previous videos, you know, talking about how I like to go like, hiking might be an oversell, but out in nature, you know, especially in like the spring and summer months, somewhere in the shade at least to keep out of the warmth, of course, but because I enjoy the outdoors, I enjoy nature, I enjoy plants and things like that, and I'm always just curious about where I'm going to take myself, right? Thankfully, I have a very good sense of direction. I probably get that from my dad. I have no idea. But in so doing, I'm often inspired by what I see to sort of build different things. And I've talked in previous videos about how building is kind of an endless thing once you start to understand how it works for you. There are times where I go out of my way to try and build and I don't like the end product that I design, but I'm still happy that I sat down and did it. And at the same time, there are also sort of building inspirational spurts, if you will, right? Where I might design 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 builds in a handful of days, you know, and then go for a month or 2 months or more without building anything at all. And that's just again, that's because that's what works for me. And I consider it like a form of writer's block. It's not writer's block because I think I'm always capable of building, but there is a mindset about it too. And you can't always put yourself in the most prime mindset. Sometimes there are just things that are out of your control, and there are just feelings you can't quite grasp. You know, sometimes it's good to just turn on like a video and have something to listen to while you're building, but sometimes you're just not in the mood for it, and that's okay too. At the same time, though, that's not to say that in those moments you can't create, because usually what breaks me out of those moments is the inspiration to build something, to do something, right? It's almost like how people tell you when when you the first thing to do when you want to do something is to start. Like that's I know I'm paraphrasing that. I don't know exactly how the saying goes, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? Essentially, the biggest barrier to you getting something accomplished is beginning. Once you begin, once you're in motion, you're likely to stay in motion. It's all the same kind of concept, right? And the same is true for building. Now, it doesn't mean that just because you're in a mood to build, that you're going to build something that'll make you happy or that you'll be satisfied with. Just like how I try to tell people, don't try to emulate what other builders do, but draw inspiration from them. And one of the most important reasons that I say this is so that you can develop the style that best resonates with you. I have had a lot of people comment on my videos about how my style is something that they really prefer because it's sort of a minimalistic style, and I appreciate that because that is what I'm going for. But I also take a lot of inspiration and am very enamored with more talented builders out there. And I say talented, with air quotes, because that's just, my subjective opinion. Sure, I don't consider myself like a master builder or anything like that because I don't think that there is such a thing. I think everybody is at some point in their journey of building, of designing, of creating, to becoming what they're happiest with. You start off unconfident, unsure you can do something. You start off not knowing because you might be able to see it in your head what you want to do, but you don't know how to translate that into a build. And that's how I used to be as well. Essentially, I've always had grand ideas for something I've wanted to accomplish with Lego builds. But it has taken me time to get not just familiar with the parts, but really understand them. Because again, having built Bionicles, built Legos since I was, as far as I can remember, I've always had experience with the parts, and there are a few like core memories where I can remember, yeah, I built that wrong, I did this thing incorrectly, so be it, right? But it's not just about learning the parts and how they go together, it's about understanding them, and I think that that's something you kind of learn through osmosis. I know that sounds super weird, but it's not something that I seek out myself. It's something that I start to grasp over time, because I think the other barrier that we all face is loose expectations and high expectations. And what do I mean by that? Well, loose expectations basically means you don't know exactly what you want to create. You just know what you think you know what you want to create, right? Like I want to make a crab, but I don't know, okay, what do I want this crab to do? What parts do I want to use? What scheme do I want to build in, right? Again, I'm most known for building in a classic style, but I can build in styles from various different years. I in a way, I'm like a chameleon with my building style, because I can very clearly emanate the building styles of other creators if I need to for any specific reason, or emanate the building style of Bionicle throughout its history, right? When I design something that's supposed to fit in with like 2007 Bionicle, for example, I can really get something that feels like it would have come out from around then. I've got something right here out from cleaning, which you guys have seen in a previous video, like this one here, this little fish, which is actually built with parts from later than 2007, like this wing here, and some Technic pieces as well. But it feels like a 2007 Rahi, like a build that you could have bought back in 2007. And I love it for that reason. But that's kind of something that you sort of start to evolve over time, and that you start to hone over time as well. And it's not the same in terms of what I usually try to build, classic inspired stuff. But at the same time, it's not nearly as different as you might think it is, because all you really need to understand about building specifically is how parts interact, how parts connect. And that sounds daunting at first, but the more experience, the more exposure you have with pieces, the more in tune with them you will get. That's why I tell people it's like learning a language, right? Because I think that you're best suited to learn a language when you are exposed to it, right? It's why a lot of people who want to learn languages often will, if they have the means to do so, go to that place and experience it, right? Because not only does it allow you to use it in that setting, but it allows you to sort of envelop yourself with that culture, with how that language was developed, right? You're not just learning it through words on a screen or on paper, but you're actually experiencing them and seeing how people wield them, how they use them, right? And the same is true for building with Lego as well, building with Bionicle as well. As someone who grew up poor, like, I didn't always have access to a lot of Lego parts. I still don't. My collection's not huge. This is a small room, and this is basically it. You know, it looks like a lot, and it's definitely respectable. I'm not happy with what I have. But I feel as though if I had more parts, I could do different things if that was what I wanted to do. I'm also someone who kind of hyper fixates, as many people do, on certain types of schemes as well, right? So like when I get into the mood of building like Glatorian sets, I can do that well. When I get into the mood of building system builds, I can do that well. When I get into the mood of building classical Rahi, etc., I can do that well. You see what I'm saying? And each of these, though still similar, each of these have their benefits is not the right word. Each has their own characteristics that are unique, but that can be mixed together if you understand how they can work together and what their strengths and weaknesses are. I'm the type of person who thinks it's best most of the time to play to your strengths rather than try to hone your weaknesses. That's not to say you should never try or that you should ever give up on something because you think you can't do it. I always try to revisit past designs, past ideas that I've had, because trying to chase your weaknesses gets you out of your comfort zone, but it forces you to be creative with it. And I think that that's really important because, again, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I've talked about a lot of this stuff before. What has forced me to be at my best in terms of building and designing is sort of forcing myself into a corner and seeing how I can make my way out of it, right? The combination models, for example, are one really good way because I started out with building combination models. I'm going to use air quotes when I say that too, because I mean, I've built mocks all of my life since I was a kid, but you've seen some of the things I created. I did a whole video on my very first mock ever, my very first Rahi ever, and then my 150th Rahi ever. And that just shows you a little bit of evolution of mine. And I can't remember every Rahi in exactly what order. Thankfully, I've been documenting them over the past few years on Discord, which you can check out for free in the description, by the way. Nearly 200 Rahi there, so you should absolutely check it out. But that said, though, with the time that I've invested in this, I've learned to sort of question myself, right? Because for a long time as a builder, I would have believed naively that I knew exactly what was a good build and what was a bad build. And I've learned over time that there's no such thing, right? I think I've always thought that, right? As humans, we all know nothing is perfect. But we never actually sit down and think about what that means, you know? We take it as just being the truth that things aren't perfect and we leave it at that. But when you do that, when you're blind to that, you can't understand when you are sort of alienating that belief. Does that make sense? Like I said, the 2001 Rahi, for example, are not perfect. I love them. They're my favorite wave of Bionicle all the way back then. That's not to say that they're the best wave, because I don't believe that's true. And again, that's all subjective at the end of the day, and it's all about what you're looking to get out of it. And I think there's an argument to be made that it's a very strong wave, even if you want to say that, well, the Rahi aren't really like enemies, so to speak. They're sort of more environmental, and I think that that's a really good point. It's also a cool part of the Bionicle theme as a whole. Pardon me. jumping off of this topic for just a brief moment, because I do want to tackle something. As I've been doing in a couple of videos recently, I've been taking a look at some more of the like Ninjago sets, because I've had Ninjago sets in the past, nothing large by any means. The elemental dragon is definitely the biggest thing that I have, and I only have the dragon from that set. I didn't go and buy anything else because it was a really good deal. I wasn't going to pass it up. I wanted a dragon to experience. Because I'm building dragon stuff with Bionicle right now, it just made sense to see, okay, well, what has Lego done, and where can I improve these things? Well, anyway, I look at Ninjago, though, as a pseudo replacement for Bionicle, right? Because Ninjago came out around the time Bionicle was canceled, which it's a system theme, so it definitely doesn't feel like the same building scheme again, but it does feel a similar niche at the end of the day in terms of like the character driven stories and the elements and things like that, right? And so, and even like the different locations and not recurring characters. What's the other? There's another word. I can't think of it. You get the point though. Ninjago is not Bionicle, obviously, otherwise they'd have the same name. But there is something that Lego does with Ninjago that I wish they would do more with Bionicle as a theme, and that's play to the inherent silliness of it. One of the strengths that I don't see too many people mention about games like Imnog, for example, a beacon of flash gaming in the early 2000s. It's a beautiful game, but there's also some just levity to it. There's some humor, there's some warmth, there's this unseriousness about it that I adore, that really lost its edge once we hit the 2004 story arc. And I think for 2004 it works because this is a different location, of course. This isn't a knock on Bionicle, by the way, because I still think that it has a very strong story, whatever direction you want to look at. But I'm also not somebody who specifically focuses or puts a lot of emphasis or importance in the story as we got it, because I don't think that's what Bionicle is to me. To someone else, they have maybe spent years, if not literally decades, researching like every single inch of Bionicle. But I feel like when you do that, you almost, again, paint yourself into a corner, right? Because you start to enamor yourself with the idea of this world, and as you invest time into it, you start to, or rather, you. Again, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this, because I don't think it's necessarily the wrong thing to do, but I think it can be inherently damaging, because you start to give undue importance to what is, at the end of the day, a fantasy world, right? It's not a real world, so if someone wants to change aspects of it for whatever reason, their preference, their restrictions, maybe they don't have the parts to build a thing in the right colors or the right way, or what, like, people work within their means, right? I think that that's all beautiful, because that's what makes us all who we are. And I think that there's a sort of creativity you have to admire about that as well, which is why I try to go out of my way and sort of puff up when other people are really proud of their designs. But anyway, outside of all of that, I feel like there is something to be said about the strength of not having every single detail of a story told to you from its inception. A lot of people really like 2001 Bionicle because of the mysteriousness of it. Someone phrased it really well in the comments a handful of days ago, and I can't remember how they said it, but I think that's like the strength that really pulled people in the most with Bionicle 2001. It's not something you can do forever, for sure, because it starts to get old on its own, but having a little bit of mystery is always a good thing. You could even argue that like 2004 had it somewhat with like the whole Akmu story arc and whatever, and like that's true too, especially if you didn't play like the Imnog games and you didn't know who that character was. Cool, all right, there's a little bit of mystery there with like which character is betraying, whatever, right? But at the end of the day, when Bionicle was rebooted back in 2015, there was a mysteriousness, but it was like it didn't come from a place of respect. It felt like, to me, the mysteriousness was almost like the fans won't understand. The story in Generation 1 got too complex, so we're going to go the opposite direction and make it so it cannot possibly be complex. We're not going to name characters. We're not going to name, which eventually they'd turn around and name them anyway, because, yeah, it turns out when you're selling characters to people, like, the people want to connect with them. That's a strength there. That's not the thing that should be mysterious. Instead, they gave us like too many details about all the wrong stuff and not enough details about the stuff we needed to know. You don't have to like tell a character's backstory or anything like that to really get an audience to empathize with them, right? All we need to know is sort of who's the good guys, who's the bad guys, what are the motivations here. And I think 2001 did that really well, because although you didn't always know the bad guy or what their plan necessarily was, from day one you were still kind of told, oh, Makuta, this being, which again, if you had not played the Imnog games, you may not have even known what or who it was, right? But you knew it was a thing, an entity that existed, and that was enough. And you knew that they were corrupting the Rahi. And even as a kid, even as someone who didn't get to play the Imnog games as a kid, even as someone who didn't have the original comic series, like, I understood what was going on, because they did a really good job of storytelling, even with like just box art stuff alone. Anyway, getting way too far ahead of ourselves in this video. Suffice to say, get out and exercise. No, actually, it's a good day to do it for me, at least. It's like 50-something degrees. Well, not right now, it's not, but it's going to be 50-something degrees at some point today. And yeah, it was a good ride. I just had to go up to the store, so I figured I'm just going to ride up there instead of doing anything else. And figured I'd come back here and chat with you guys for a handful of minutes. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this one. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I've got plenty more cleaning to do until this room is fully set. I still got drawers to put in these things too, and drawers to fill, but hopefully we got enough room. I think I have room for one more narrow one. If I have to get one, I will. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one as well. And I'm really going to cross my fingers that I can set up something over here in this corner. This room is so much smaller than I thought it was. So if I have to do something with this area here and try to make like a filming thing, and I'll do what I can. It's definitely going to be more time consuming than I was hoping, but that's pretty much it. Again, Discord is in the description. You can check out the Rahi there, but you can also just join in on the conversation. We have a lot of fun conversations over there. I've got some notifications I got to check already anyway. On top of that, you can also check out Instagram and Patreon if you want to support the channel and get some perks. It really does help out. And I think I'm going to try to start putting names at the end of videos, but I don't know how to do any of that yet. So I'm going to have to reach out to some people. Yeah, so make sure you're subscribed and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.